You can grow 100 pounds of potatoes in a space no bigger than a card table. 4 square feet, a square you could set a chair on. And I'll be honest with you up front. The way my grandmother would have wanted, 100 is your best in a fine year. 40 to 60 is what you'll really pull your first season, but hold on to that. 40 to 60 pounds out of 4 square feet, when the long 30-foot row most folks break their backs over, gives the same or less. That's no trick. It's just an old way of growing that almost nobody does anymore. Here's the part nobody tells you. The reason your potatoes have always disappointed you was never your soil and never your green thumb. It's that you're growing them flat, sprawled sideways across the dirt, the way the seed catalogue taught everybody. And the whole time they're lying there hogging your best sunny ground, the beans and the squash and the greens you wanted have got nowhere to go. The old way grows them standing up instead. And the reason that works is simple. When you bury a potato stem, the buried part puts out side shoots, and the tip of each one swells into a new potato. A garden row only lets you bury an inch or two, so you get a few potatoes per plant, but keep burying that stem as it climbs. A foot, 2 feet, 3, and every new buried inch makes more shoots. And every shoot is another potato. More buried stem, more potatoes. That's the whole secret. And it's why my grandmother always said, "A smart woman makes the ground work twice." Now I want you to take out your diary or your notebook, get a pen that writes smooth, and jot this down as I go. Because I'm going to tell you things that the garden catalogues won't. This is the kind of knowledge that's been kept close for too long. I'm Amish, and I know it's not our way to stand up and shout, but I tell you true, there are blessings in the earth that are meant for everyone. The good Lord put them there, and it is no sin to share how to find them. I feel the weight of it, and I'm choosing to break the silence because I believe his provision is for all his children, not just for a few. So, let me take you through exactly how to do it. Every step, the kind of potato you have to use, and the simplest straw-only version at the very end that a beginner can put up in 20 minutes. Now, I put together a guide that goes well past this one method. Everything the old women in my family knew about feeding a household from a small piece of ground and keeping a cellar full through winter. If you want it, it's out there, but we'll get to that. Now to the potatoes. Now here is the step that makes or breaks the whole thing. And if you get this one wrong, nothing else you do will save it. You have to start with the right kind of potato. And this is exactly where I see good, careful people fail. They build a beautiful tower, they follow every other step just so, and they pull up 10 or 15 pounds and walk away thinking the method was nonsense. It wasn't the method, it was the potato. Write this down in your book. There are 2 kinds of potatoes, and they behave completely differently in a tower. The first kind sets all its potatoes in one layer down near the bottom of the plant. And no matter how much you bury the stem after that, it will not make a single potato more. You can build your tower 6 feet tall, and it'll give you the same little handful it would have given you in the ground. Most of your early season potatoes are this kind. The Yukon Golds, the Red New Orleans, the ones a lot of folks reach for first. They are fine potatoes. They are just the wrong potato for this. The second kind keeps right on making new potatoes along the stem as you keep burying it. Those are the ones you want, and you must use them. The names to look for are Russet, Burbank, German Butterball, Canella Russet, KBEC, and Elba. Those are the kind that reward you for hilling them up tall, because they'll set potatoes at every level all the way up the tower. So, get yourself certified seed potatoes from a garden centre or a seed supplier and ask for one of those names. Now you'll pay a little for certified seed, figure somewhere around $3 or $4 a pound and £4 or £5 for a tower, so call it $15 or $20 to plant a tower. That'll give you back 50 or better. That's the whole cost of it. Don't use potatoes out of the grocery store to save that little bit because it isn't a savings. The grocery ones are very often sprayed with something to keep them from sprouting on the shelf. And that same spray will fight you the whole way and leave you with a thin, spotty stand and no notion why. The other thing certified seed buys you is clean stock. It's grown to be free of the diseases that ride along in ordinary potatoes and sit in your soil for years afterward. So between the sprout spray and the disease, the grocery potato costs you far more than the seed potato ever would. Spend the little bit on the real thing. It's the cheapest insurance you'll ever buy in that garden. And one more word on the variety, because I cannot say it strongly enough. If you remember nothing else from all of this, remember that the kind of potato decides everything. I've watched people do every single other step right, the building, the layering, the watering, all of it, and pull up a sad little harvest because they planted the wrong kind, and then blame themselves or blame the method. It was neither. It was the seed. So when you stand at that counter, you say the names out loud. Russet, Burbank, German Butterball, Canella, Russet, KBEC, Elba, and you don't let anybody talk you into the pretty early variety on sale by the door. That sale potato is the very one that'll quit on you at one layer. Write this next part down carefully. About 2 or 3 days before you plan to plant, take your seed potatoes and cut them into chunks roughly the size of an egg. And make sure every chunk has at least 2 eyes on it. Those are the little dimples the sprouts come from. A small seed potato, hardly bigger than an egg already, you can leave whole. There's no rule says you must cut it. With the bigger ones, look the potato over first and cut so the eyes are spread among your pieces, not all left on one chunk and none on another. Then set the cut pieces out cut side up in a single layer in a cool shady spot. And let those cut faces dry and skin over for the 2 or 3 days. Don't skip this. A fresh cut potato dropped straight into moist ground is very likely to rot before it ever sprouts, and you'll have gaps in your stand. Letting it callus over first is what seals it against the rot. Now we build the structure. There's more than one way, and I'll give you the one that works best and is the simplest to come by. Take a length of welded wire fencing, the kind with the 2-inch by 4-inch openings, and cut yourself a piece about 12.5 feet long. Bend it around into a circle, a little under 4 feet across, and fasten the 2 ends together with wire ties, or a few short bits of baling wire. That gives you a round cage that sits on about 4 square feet of ground. Set it down on level dirt in the sunniest spot you have. And I mean full sun, 6 to 8 hours of it. Potatoes will not give you a real harvest in the shade, so don't waste the effort putting your tower where the sun doesn't reach. Once the cage is standing, line the inside of the bottom foot or so with straw, pressing it firm against the wire all the way around so it makes a kind of nest. That straw wall keeps your growing mix from spilling out through the gaps. A word on cutting that fencing since the cut ends are sharp. Wear a good pair of gloves and snip it so you leave a few inches of the cross wires sticking out one end. Those little prongs hook right into the openings on the other end and hold your cylinder together near as well as the ties do. Set the whole thing on level ground too, because a tower built on a slope will shed its water to the low side and dry out unevenly, and you'll wonder why one half does poorly. If your ground isn't level, take a few minutes with a spade and make it so before you fill anything. Now, if you'd rather not bother with wire at all, the very same thing can be done in a 55-gallon drum with holes drilled in the bottom and the sides for drainage, or a big trash can done the same way, or a wooden box knocked together out of 4 pallets wired into a square. The shape doesn't matter one bit. What matters is that the walls go up at least 3 feet, that water can drain out the bottom, and that there's room across for 4 or 5 seed pieces in each layer. I'll tell you though, the wire and the straw is the cheapest and the easiest to take apart at harvest, which is why it's the one I'd send a beginner to first. Here's where the growing starts. In the bottom of your tower, put down about 6 inches of a mix that's half compost and half straw, or if you like, equal parts compost, garden soil and straw. The point is that it has to be loose, it has to drain, and it has to be rich. Set 4 or 5 of your seed potato pieces right on top of that, spaced out evenly with the eyes pointing up. Cover them over with another 4 to 6 inches of the same mix. Then water it through until the whole thing is evenly damp but not soaking. You don't want a swamp in there. That's your first layer done, and the tower should be filled to about a foot. Now you wait. In a week or 2, depending on how warm the ground is, you'll see green shoots come pushing up through the top. And here is the exact spot where ordinary gardening quits, and this method keeps going. In a row, you'd hill once and let the plant be, but you're going to keep building. Every time those shoots grow about 8 to 10 inches above the top of the mix, you add another layer. Pile 4 to 6 more inches of your compost and straw, mix in around the stems, and bury all of it except the top 3 or 4 inches of leaves. You're covering up most of the plant each time on purpose. That's what tells the buried stem to put out a fresh round of side shoots. And every one of those is another potato starting. Let me walk it through so you can see the rhythm of it. You plant, and the tower's filled to about a foot. The shoots come up, and you let them reach maybe 10 inches tall. So now there's 8 or 10 inches of green standing above the mix. You bury all but the top 3 or 4 inches. That's your first hilling, and the tower's filled to 1.5 feet or so. 2-3 weeks on, the plants climb up out of that again, another 8 or 10 inches showing. You bury it again, all but the top. Now you're up past 2 feet. You do it a third time, maybe a fourth, and by then that tower standing the full 3 feet, packed with stem buried from the bottom clear to the top, and potatoes forming along every inch of it. That's the whole thing in motion. The plant climbs, you bury, it climbs, you bury. Each round is another shelf of potatoes you'd never have gotten in a flat row. One thing to watch as you go, don't pack that mix down hard around the stems when you add a layer. Tumble it in loose and let it settle on its own. Potatoes need to push out into soft, airy ground to swell up proper. If you tamp it down tight, you choke them and they come out small and few. Loose and rich is what you're after. Every layer. Here's the timing to keep in your head. In most middle-of-the-country gardens, you plant your tower 2 or 3 weeks after your last frost, once the ground has warmed up to around 45 degrees. The first hilling comes about 3 weeks after the shoots break through. After that, you hill again every 2 or 3 weeks, each time the stems reach that 8 to 10 inch mark. From the day you plant to the last hilling runs about 10 to 12 weeks. If you're up in the colder country, you'll plant a little later, and the whole thing moves a touch faster. If you're down in the warm country, you can start earlier, and you might get 1 extra hilling out of the season. Now the watering, and I want you to pay close attention here because this is where more towers are lost than anywhere else. A tower dries out far faster than a garden row does. In a row, the potato has all the earth around it holding the moisture in. In a tower, that mix is open to the air on every side through the wire, and the wind pulls the water right out of it. So, you have to water deep, and you have to water steady. The rule I'd give you is this. Push your finger down into the mix about 3 inches. If it's dry down there, water it through until you see the water coming out the straw at the bottom. In the hot stretch of summer, that might mean every other day. In cool or rainy weather, twice a week is plenty, but keep it even. A potato that gets dried out and then drowned over and over grows up knobby and small and split. A potato kept evenly damp grows up smooth and full. Steady is the whole thing. For feeding, the compost in your mix carries most of what the plants need. But if you want to push the harvest a little higher, you can side dress with a balanced organic fertilizer or pour on a little compost tea every 3 or 4 weeks while it's growing hard. Just don't get heavy-handed with the nitrogen, the stuff that greens up the leaves. Too much of it, and you'll grow a magnificent bush on top and find next to nothing underneath. You want the plant putting its strength into potatoes, not into showing off. Let me name the few mistakes I see catch people so you can step around them before they cost you. The first is the variety, and I've already preached on that, so I'll only say it once more. Wrong potato, wrong harvest, no exceptions. The second is shade. People tuck the tower against the north side of the house or under a tree to keep it handy, and then wonder at the poor showing. A potato is a sun plant. Full stop. Give it the brightest corner you've got. The third is letting the mix dry out, which I'll come to in a moment because it's the big one. The fourth is hilling too little. A timid gardener buries an inch or two and feels they've done the thing, but you have to be bold about it. Bury most of that plant each time, leaving only the top few inches of leaf showing because the buried part is the part that makes the food. And the fifth is starting too big. Folks read about £100 and want to build 4 towers their first spring. Build one, learn its watering, learn its rhythm, learn your own ground through 1 honest season, and then build 4 next year, knowing exactly what you're doing. Here's how you know when to quit hilling and when to dig. Once the plants flower, that's your sign the potatoes underneath are well on their way, and that's when you stop adding layers. Let the plant pour everything it's got into fattening up the potatoes instead of climbing higher. From the flowering to the harvest is usually another 4 to 6 weeks, and the way you know it's truly ready is when the vines start to yellow and die back on their own. Don't you rush that part. Those last weeks are when the potatoes put on their final weight and the skins toughen up. And a tough skin is what lets a potato keep all winter in the cellar instead of going soft on you by Christmas. Then comes the best part, the part to do with your grandchildren if you've got them near. If you built the wire tower, just snip the ties, unwrap the fencing, and let the whole column tumble over. And then you go through it with your hands like a treasure hunt, because the potatoes are sitting at every level, top to bottom. Little ones light up at it. It's a good memory to give a child that food comes up out of the ground like that by your own work, and there's plenty of it. Now let me come back to that £100, because I told you at the very start I'd be honest about it, and I will be. £100 can be done off a mature russet tower in a fine year by someone who's grown this way many seasons and has every part of it down. But your first year, plan on £40 to £60 out of one little 4-square-foot tower, and let anything pass that be a happy surprise. I'd hate for you to hit £50, which is a wonder, and feel you'd failed because a thumbnail said 100. £40 to £60 off a square the size of a card table, when a 30-foot row gives you the same or less, is an extraordinary thing. Get a season or two under you, learn your own watering in your own ground, and the number climbs from there. So here's the question worth asking. Why does almost nobody grow potatoes this way anymore when the old women knew it plain? And the answer isn't that somebody hid it. It's worse than that in a way, because nobody had to. There's just no money in teaching you to grow £100 of potatoes off 4 square feet of your own ground and a couple dollars of seed. The seed company would rather sell you the easy, popular variety that sets one little layer and quits, the very one that fails in a tower. The grocery would rather you never fill your own cellar at all. And every garden book and seed catalogue teaches the long flat row, because that's how it's always been printed. So that's how everybody plants. No one sat in a room and schemed to make you forget the better way. It's just that there was never a dollar in reminding you. And so the knowledge quietly slipped out of one generation and didn't make it into the next. That's not a conspiracy. It's just a system running along on its own with no one at the wheel. And it nearly cost us something worth keeping. So if any of this changes the way you mean to plant come spring, I truly want to hear about it. Write it down in your diary, the county you're growing in, and how old your house is. I love knowing where this old knowledge is taking root again, and tell me which kind of potato you settled on, because I promise you, somebody reading is about to make the determinate mistake, and your word might save their whole tower. Now, before I let you go, let me give you that simplest version I promised for anybody who looked at the wire and the building and thought, that's more than I want to take on. There's a way to do this with nothing but straw. You lay 4 seed pieces right on the bare ground in a little square about 2 feet across. You cover them over with about 8 inches of loose straw. And that's the entire setup. No soil, no compost, no structure, just potatoes on the dirt under a heap of straw. When the shoots come up through it 8 or 10 inches, you pile on another thick layer of straw, burying most of the green again. You do that 3 more times across the season, and by the end, you've got a mound of straw about 2.5 feet tall. The straw keeps the potatoes in the dark where they need to be, holds the damp better than you'd think, and breaks down slow enough to hold its shape all season. At harvest, you just pull the pile apart, and there your potatoes are, clean, dry, sitting in the straw, no digging at all. A mound like that will give you somewhere around £50 for almost no labour. The wire tower will beat it because the compost feeds the plants more. But for a beginner, the straw mound is so easy and so forgiving that it's exactly where I'd tell you to start. And if you toss a handful of balanced organic fertiliser into each straw layer as you build it up, you'll close most of that gap. Next time, the good Lord willing, I'll show you how the old folks kept those potatoes sound and sweet, clear through to spring, without a freezer or a single thing plugged into the wall. The way a proper root cellar is set up, the temperature and the damp you're after, what you store next to what, and the one common mistake that turns a whole winter's worth of potatoes soft and sprouted before February. Because growing the food is only the first half of the work. Keeping it is the other half, and that's where the real plenty lives. The whole of it comes down to one plain thing. Buried stems make more potatoes. The tower, the straw, all the hilling. It's only ever a way of giving the plant more stem to bury. Grow it standing up instead of lying down. Give it steady water and full sun, and the right kind of seed and one little square of your ground will feed your table all winter long. Try it this season. Tell me how it goes. And remember, the people who built this country with their hands knew things we are only just starting to remember.